Elham, who should listen to this conversation?
I think more than anyone, Khan, it would be young people. I wished I could talk to my young self and tell her not to worry so much, and that she's on the right track. So I hope that your podcast, your excellent podcast, reaches young people more than anyone.
So the reason why I invited you onto Inspiring Youth Agency was after your visit to my school last year, where you told your incredible story of resilience and just the way you just made things work. And I think your story will resonate with a lot of people, whether they are, migrants or whether they are, people with privilege, right? Because it's just such an incredible story. And I look forward to hear more about that and to showcase that to the listeners. So I suppose briefly, can you just explain your career past to present and what is your mission?
My mission these days is very different to what it was 10 years ago. I would say 20 years ago, my mission was to become a finance director as fast as I could, because I knew that staying in a purely accountancy role wouldn't interest me enough. I was too interested in business and operations and commercial aspects of the business and the people aspects. But I was a qualified accountant. I got a degree in accounting and finance, then qualified as an accountant and got my first financial controller job in GE at the age of 25. But I knew that I want to be a finance director so that I can have the most impact on the numbers in a business. That was my mission back then. Then I got married, and as it happens, when you have children, they become the most important thing in your life. And whilst I carried on with my career, my new priority was my children. So my mission at that point was really to create the kind of a stable, loving family life and full of opportunities for my children to explore in a supportive, stable environment, which is, I guess, something I didn't have when I was growing up. And I'll say more on that later. These days, my mission has changed again. It is actually through my charity, Migrant Leaders, which I launched back in 2017. My mission is really to train 10,000 young migrants in the UK, send them ready to hit the ground running, send them to the corporates that we work with, because then that will make a difference to those corporate cultures, and that will make a difference to their diversity, inclusion, and improve their profitability as well. I'm convinced of that. So the mission these days is to train 10,000 young migrants and send them to the corporates hitting the ground running.
And 10,000, did you say? That is a huge number, and I suppose a very reasonable goal for someone like yourself who is driven and focused and passionate as well, which is very important. So can you just, for the listeners, contextualize and I suppose demystify who are migrants and what issues do they face?
Migrants are as diverse as are people diverse. There are all sorts of migrants, and the categories aren't even mutually exclusive. When we came to the UK, I didn't see myself as a refugee. But then we fled war, and we came to the UK at the height of the Iran-Iraq war. And something my father said recently made me realize we were like refugees because we fled war, and to come to this country was a huge move. We left behind everything. And when we came here, we really lost our status. and the family got separated. I ended up at 18 with nothing and my little brother to look after. So it was like a refugee situation. There are other kinds of migrants who come here with capital, resources, leverage. And some of them come at an older age after a 20-year career in a big company and they're seconded to the UK. They too are migrants. There are migrants whose parents have nothing, either had very little in their own countries or had everything in their countries, including education. And they left all of that behind, and the parents gave all of that up, and they work as cleaners, taxi drivers, factory workers, care workers. The parents give up everything in order for their children to have a better chance in the future. There are all kinds of migrants. But what we have in common is that all of us came here with a reason. We came here to succeed. We didn't come here to fail.
Absolutely. I think that is probably the defining characteristic of anyone who's in a situation as such, you know, as a migrant, is that will to make it work and to, you know, survive and thrive. Especially here in the West, it's kind of hard for a lot of people to contextualize giving up everything and moving along. So my next question is, what was your upbringing like? How did that shape you?
I think the biggest thing that shaped me since my childhood in Iran was my father's background. He told us many stories. Where do I start? But the biggest story was that my father grew up in a little village in the county of Azerbaijan in Iran. And this village didn't have water, electricity, or even a school. And as an 8, 9, 10-year-old, he had to run really fast every day in order to get to the next village, which had a very basic school. And he had to run because in Azerbaijan, this is northwest of Iran and next to Russia, it's freezing in winter, minus 25 to 30 degrees sometimes. And that's Celsius. And there were wolves. So he tried to run as fast as he could so that it reduces the chances of being attacked by wolves on his way to school. And he was an ambitious child. He told me that one day he was sitting at a little pond in his village, and an old man came to him. And in this village, by the way, everyone was illiterate. No one could read or write. There were only 2 people who could read or write. One was the Muslim cleric in the mosque in the village, and the second person was my grandfather. The reason he could read and write is because he was a devout Muslim and he really wanted to read the Quran. So that was his motivation. But you might think that in a village where everyone is illiterate, you know, they're illiterate, there's no wisdom. But that's not true. Wisdom is a much more complex concept than that. Life itself gives you some wisdom. And there was an old man. My dad might have been around 12, 13 at this point. And he was sitting around the pond, kind of playing with the fish in the pond. And an old man came to him and he said, "You are Ali." My father said, "Yes." And the old man said, "I've heard about you, young man. I've heard you're really good at maths. You're really bright. Let me tell you something. You see this little pond with all the little fish? You're not meant for that little pond. The fish in that pond can only grow so much because it's a little pond. You are meant for the seas and the oceans. You need to leave this village and grow in the pond that you were meant to grow." And that made quite an impression on my dad. That's wisdom from that old man in his village. So by the time he was 18, he completed the national exams called concours, which was back then based on the French education system. And he did pretty well, despite the basic schools he went to in this village. And he got a scholarship to study electrical engineering at the top university in the capital city, Tehran. So his stories that he told me, such as these stories, gave me an ambition, made me realize that all of us have to live life with purpose. My dad doesn't get to define my purpose. No one gets to define my purpose but me.
But you.
You've got to believe in your purpose. And if you don't know what's your purpose, you're supposed to talk to people, experience things, go and try things, read things, think, observe, talk, travel, whatever it is that you've got to do to find your purpose so that you're committed to that. So my childhood and upbringing was very much driven by these stories. Lots and lots of stories. My father, my aunties, my uncles, so many of them told me each of them is full of their own stories.
So obviously then your whole family were just a brilliant and really firm support network for you. So as a young lady, and I suppose at this time you were quite new to the UK, right? And you wanted to go to university. Can you tell me a bit about how you managed to make that happen?
I was very determined and I was very confident. I was unusually confident as a young person. So I thought, like many adolescents, I thought I got it sussed out. I remember how I thought, yeah, I got it worked out, you know. And even some kids at school who told me nasty things like, go back where you came from. I always felt that the nerds and the geeks are going to rule the world. So I thought, that's it. I'm a STEM student. I'm good at my studies. I've got it all sussed out. They can say whatever they want. I really felt confident. So I had a game plan. The game plan was do well in my GCSEs, do well in my A-levels, go to university, get a top job, pay my taxes, earn loads of money, and show them. I guess the best revenge is success. That was my plan. And by the time I was 18, though, everything went wrong because my parents separated. My dad went back to Iran. I really became the head of the house. These days, when we do our safeguarding training in Migrant Leaders as mentors and trustees, they talk about in the safeguarding training, they talk about childhood experiences which are traumatic. And I couldn't help but notice that in my case, I ticked majority of the boxes. And it made me very sad for my young self because I didn't realize at the time that I was a young carer. I was caring for my mom and I was caring for my brother financially, emotionally, mentally, in every way, practically, while I was studying at school. But I still felt confident I can cope with that. I earned £4,000 over the few years by the time I reached 18. And I did that mainly by selling perfumes door to door and teaching maths to anyone whose parents were willing to pay. So I had £4,000 and that was supposed to be my university fund. But unfortunately, our situation kept going downhill financially. So I decided to give that money to my mom for my little brother. And being penniless again, I thought, oh, I'm in trouble now. How am I going to go to university? They're telling me that I'll be counted as a foreign student. And I checked those foreign student fees. It was impossible. Even if I worked full time, there was no way I could pay the foreign student fees. So I thought the only way I could go to university is if they count me as a home student. Who do I have to convince? I thought the British government. And where do I believe the British government is? Well, apart from Parliament, which I knew wouldn't let me in, I thought the local council in Birmingham might listen. So I camped outside Birmingham City Council offices for 3 days in a row and wouldn't leave. I was determined. And on the third day, someone took me in and I spoke to two gentlemen. I explained to them my game plan and what I'm trying to do. just to go to university, and they offered their help. And as such, I was counted as a home student, and that was really probably the biggest lifeline I have had in my life.
So you have had clearly from young this passion, and you talk about this game plan. So I suppose, what advice do you have for people who may be in a similar situation to you, in overcoming adversity, whatever that may be? What's your advice for them?
If you had asked me that 10 years ago, I would have given you a really logical answer. Find your strengths. And I guess the logical answer still applies, but I'm going to tell you something after the logical answer. The logical answer is find your true strengths, what you're really strong at. For example, with Migrant Leaders, we've got 3,500 mentees now, and they have access free of charge to an assessment tool, which is called Strengths Profile Assessment. And it gives them a report afterwards that tells them what their natural strengths are and what kind of professions might be interesting to them and they would be good at. So I would say find your strength. You can talk to people who know you well, people you trust and believe in. We can talk through mentors, and you can do such assessments and see what kind of industries and companies really make money out of your natural strength.
That's some very, very good advice. It's like capitalizing on your, it is. It's capitalizing on your ability and maximizing your potential and outcome. What is the mission of Migrant Leaders?
The mission is to really enable every young migrant in the UK, first or second generation young migrant in the UK, and train them so that they can hit the ground running when they enter the corporate life. And we do this by a variety of ways. We've got 2,000 mentors from 95 big companies. We've got insight days, work experiences, training workshops, a lot of support that we give Migrant Leaders mentees. And ultimately, our mission is to move from the current 3,500 mentees to one day having 10,000 Migrant Leaders mentees.
10,000 mentees, and you're providing them with essentially the keys to unlocking their potential, because they have that potential in them, but you are leveling the playing field for them. Now, I'm also aware that Migrant Leaders is open to those who are socio-economically disadvantaged as well. That's correct?
That's right. In fact, our key eligibility criteria is socioeconomic disadvantage. 14% of our mentees are white British disadvantaged because we allow them into our program as well. We don't want to leave anyone socioeconomically disadvantaged behind.
Very honourable, and it's very good that it's open to all those who are disadvantaged. So, can you tell me about the best and the toughest moments of your career so far?
Yeah, the best and the toughest are the same thing. Leaving EY to focus full time on Migrant Leaders. It was both the best and the toughest because it was a big thing leaving a job I love at EY, a firm that I've dreamed of ever since I was 15 years old, walking in Cornwall Row, looking in Birmingham, looking at the EY office, thinking, oh, what kind of people work here? It was always my dream to work for EY since I was 15 years old. So to leave EY at the age of sort of my 40s, when I had been working there and was happy, was a tough decision. But it also felt like the best and the most right decision. I was absolutely sure about it. And I left EY in 2019 to focus full time on Migrant Leaders, and it turned out to be the right decision.
So to give up essentially your dream career that you had planned to reach, and then set up a charity that you'd never previously dreamed of setting up, that is a huge risk to take. How did it feel taking that risk, taking that jump?
I felt the burden, the pressure of making migrant leaders successful, because if you leave a career like EY that you always dreamed of and you love, you had better make migrant leaders really successful. But these days, to be honest, every time I hear a story from a mentee who says they got into their apprenticeship, they got into their graduate job, they really benefited from their migrant leaders mentoring relationship, they really benefited from our program, every story is a win. It's just brilliant, to be honest. I love it.
And it really is sort of the definition of giving back. And I suppose that the man in your father's village was absolutely right, because he told him to go and chase the ocean rather than a pool. And look at that chain reaction now, where like you're here giving back to hopefully 10,000 individuals, which is just superb. And then who knows the, reciprocal effects of that.
Happened. One of our mentees, so many things have happened, but one of our mentees, for example, Omar, he is an engineering graduate now and is working with one of the migrant leaders engineering mentors in a German engineering company in the UK. He's said that he saw what I did with migrant leaders. So he's started a charity called, and I should say it's Gambians for Gambia is his charity, is what it's called. So already so many mentees are inspired to do similar things.
Do you think young people, especially in the UK, sort of don't appreciate the opportunity that's out there?
I think they appreciate the opportunity that's out there, but because of social media these days, they are also aware of the magnitude of what they could and should achieve. In a way, when I was growing up, I had nothing to lose because I didn't know what's the maximum you can achieve. So everything felt like a bonus. But these days, because of social media, the expectations on young people are so high. My advice to them would be the person you most need to compete with is yourself. If you keep upping your game and be the absolute best you can be, and then occasionally surprised how much better you can be, then you won't go far wrong. Just look at yourself and compete with yourself, with your own best. Don't keep comparing to the world out there. It's futile.
I completely agree with that. I mean, the philosophy of being better than yesterday is, I think, a foolproof one. When you start comparing yourself to other people, you are messing with so many variables that, you can't control. So what has been your favorite migrant success story that you've heard? And I understand that you've also wrote a book full of these stories. So I suppose select one from there, and for the benefit of the listeners, tell us all about it.
So the book that I wrote is called Migrant Magic. And it's really emerged because over the last 5 years, I've had more than 1,000 meetings with corporate executives in order to recruit the mentors for migrant leaders. And every time these mentors themselves told me something interesting about their own backstory, I wrote a little blurb about them. And I ended up with 400 blurbs about 400 different people. So I selected 60 of them who are themselves migrants, successful migrants now in the UK, and I included their stories and tips in the book Migrant Magic. There are so many of them that are favorites, so many that are very difficult, very difficult. Many of them have become friends, and some of them talked about the racism they experienced as children when they came to the UK. Others talked about the war and political unrest they experienced in their country. I found so much in common with so many of them. Even white British backgrounds who came from north of England, who thought of London the way I used to think of London when I was in Birmingham, There's so much sentiment in common that is very difficult to kick away.
That analogy of how similar people's experiences are, despite coming from sort of different backgrounds, with regards to, success is quite telling to the fact that I suppose people think of migrants as like others, but really everyone's in it together. We're all trying to succeed. So people can become migrant leader mentees. Where can they buy your book?
Buy the book from Amazon. If they want to email me and purchase a book directly from me, then I get a chance to sign it, especially for them as well. They can do that as well. I'm always happy to, because the stories in the book will help the reader find new impetus in their life. So it's always a pleasure for me to do that for them.
So, Elham, what has been the crowning achievement of your life?
Yeah, to be honest, the thing that I'm most proud of is, I know it's a cliche to say this, but it's true. It's my children. They're really good children. And me and my husband are like, we act like old people. We kind of keep telling each other, God, we've got good children. Aren't we lucky? They're really decent human beings. I think any parent, teacher, uncle, auntie, grandparent who brings up decent human beings, that is a massive achievement. And then after that, I would say professionally, it's Migrant Leaders, for sure.
It's Migrant Leaders. I thought Migrant Leaders would be first, but that's a very interesting response.
As much as I love Migrant Leaders, nothing compares to one's own children. And that is the hardest and also the most rewarding thing any human being can do, is to look after children, whether it's their own or their nieces, nephews, grandchildren. Looking after children is a real privilege. And to do it well, it's something that everybody should be proud of. Not everything is to do with career achievement.
And speaking of career, I want to just tap into some of your career, amassed knowledge and ask for some advice for the listener. So I suppose if there is a migrant listening, they know what to do. Sign up to Migrant Leaders, it's free. But for most other people, perhaps those who fall outside of the bracket, what's some good career advice or a lesson that you'd like to share?
I would say, and this is the bit that is not a logical piece of advice. It is something to do with one's mojo. I believe every person is meant for a job or industry that they love and they're really good at. And if you've lost your mojo or haven't found your mojo, something that really you think, yeah, I'm really good at this. I'm proud of myself when I do this job. Or I'm proud of working for this company or in this industry. I really believe in what this industry achieves or what this company does. If you haven't found it, don't give up. Keep trying. And everything that you try, give it your best shot so that you've given it a fair chance. Find your mojo, because life can be so sweet when you're doing work that you love and your work that you're really good at.
That's completely true. And I feel like one thing that I've heard a lot is that you want work to feel as easy as rest and play. That's what you want your work to be. Does that reflect on what you're saying?
It is, but at the same time, I would say good stuff generally aren't easy. I'll give you an example. I'm not 20 anymore, so my energy levels aren't like what they used to be. When I was 25 and in GE, I was doing a full-time financial controller job, and then I would go at 7 p.m. I would eat my dinner at 6 p.m., go back to the factory site at 7 p.m. to work with the night engineers to learn about Six Sigma projects until 2 a.m. And on the nights that I didn't do that, I had my work university executive MBA classes to do in Coventry, driving like a maniac in my little MCC Smart, as fast as that car could go, to Warwick University. I had a ridiculous amount of energy, and I still used to go clubbing Friday and Saturday nights with my husband. Then he was my boyfriend. So that kind of energy, I don't have that much energy. So when I work on Migrant Leaders, there are times that I have to file the accounts, I have to write up something mundane, I have to answer emails, assess hundreds of applications to Migrant Leaders. There are sometimes things to do at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. You're tired and you can't have a coffee to boost you at that time of night. It's not everything is meant to feel exciting all the time. Not everything is supposed to be easy all the time. You've got to take all of it. You've got to do those bits in order to have the privilege of achieving something remarkable. You know, it's managing one's expectations.
I suppose those are the expectations of an entrepreneur. Do you consider yourself to be an entrepreneur?
I never used to, but launching Migrant Leaders and growing Migrant Leaders had made me realize, actually, I am an entrepreneur. That is what I'm really good at. When I was in EY, I was working on process improvement for corporate clients, on finance transformations, cost reduction, restructuring, and I was pretty good at that. But among my EY colleagues, I wasn't exceptional at that, you know? And yet when I look at Migrant Leaders, I am exceptionally good at Migrant Leaders. I found the thing that really differentiates me and something that I'm really, really exceptional at. So I just want to do more of that.
I see. So that really is testament to finding your passion and to finding just what you're best at and what you're most passionate about and what you can do the best at. And I suppose the listeners will be able to take some wisdom from that. Certainly. There's so much opportunity out there in the world. What do you say to the listener right now, the young person who is well aware of the opportunity, but is afraid to take the leap?
Yeah, so something I've noticed with young people, they do have many more opportunities and many different types of opportunities these days than we used to have. And sometimes I've noticed they are gathering opportunities and ticking boxes without a game plan. They're trying to get some labels like, oh, I launched a program, or I went and studied this, or I've done this certificate, and ticking boxes without a strategy. Life is like a chess game. You're supposed to be playing a game, and it's supposed to feel like playing chess. The things are supposed to be interrelated, right? When you play chess, you don't just make lots of moves independently of each other. All the moves are supposed to be related to each other. So, make a plan. Think strategically about whether making this move is strategically right for your game plan, because then you will see and measure the risks associated with that move correctly. If it is really strategically important for you to do that, then you would take the risk. But if it's not strategically important, why would you take a risk?
That is some very good wisdom there. Absolutely. Play life like a chess game. And I suppose that'll resonate with a lot of young people. I don't know if this is of your life. I don't know if you play video games, but lots of young people do. And video games are almost like chess, except with a lot of visuals and processing and sound. But the premise is quite similar. You make strategy and you enact that strategy. So yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on there that people shouldn't be going about life, you could say aimlessly, Because when you're making sporadic moves, it kind of is aimless, even if you think you're getting somewhere. Through you are a mentor with your own charity. So working with young people, what's one thing that you found that lots of young people aren't doing that they should do?
I'm a little bit worried about something with young people these days because they're getting very contradictory messages. For example, in certain technical fields such as IT or engineering, software development, finance, accounting, economics, they are getting the message that, oh, we can train you in 6 weeks and you don't need to do a degree. I'm not sure I agree. Even with apprenticeships, you have to go to classes, you have to pass courses, and many of those technical fields, when you do an apprenticeship, you get a degree with it. So please, young people, don't forget that in many fields, the first career objective you need to have is build technical competence in that area. Once you've built your technical competence, you can then go into the business and add value in the business, become leaders, MDs and CEOs. But without a starting point technical competence, none of that happens.
So you think, in your view, young people are focused on like fast education and not, I suppose, putting in the effort to be specialized in something. And that's one of the downfalls that lots of people fallen into.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends. In certain cases, if someone, for example, is really a strong young entrepreneur and they really understand the target market, probably because they're one of the consumers themselves, and they're in the right place at the right time with the right people to start a tech business, then you assess that risk, you assess, you do a SWOT analysis in a way, the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. It's all a logical decision. And if they could really make a success out of that and they consult a few older heads like me, then okay, go ahead and do that. But that should be a logical decision. But in majority of cases for young people, a very good starting point in their early careers is to do a degree or apprenticeship, is to go into a technical field, enter a large company because they pay decent salaries, you get a good label on your CV, you work with leading practice people, and the corporates are a very good training ground for your early careers. And you can time box that. You can say, look, I'll devote 2 years, 3 years, 5 years to this company, get as many promotions and training as I can, add as much value as I can, and you time box it. And then you can come out and do what you want with that. But you've got to build the foundations. It's like building a house. Technical competence is like the foundations of a house. You might progress faster if you ignore the foundations and just build walls and windows and roofs. But without the foundations, that lovely house you've built is going to fall apart.
I'm sure your message there will really resonate with a lot of people. I have found that being of Gen Z, especially through social media, there is a lot of fast success culture and everyone thinks that they can be an entrepreneur. And the truth is, of all of our generation, maybe only 10% of people are really suited to being entrepreneurs. So your advice is to build technical competence, to get out there, get some, foundational education and try the corporate ladder. And I suppose then those who aren't suited to staying in the corporate ladder will eventually, I suppose in a way like yourself, although, you've been in the corporate ladder for a long time and now you become an entrepreneur. I suppose eventually those people who are on the corporate ladder, they'll break off and others will have what they need to get by and to continue to climb that ladder anyway, which is more suited to them.
Exactly. And if they can do that by devoting a fixed amount of time, be flexible because things can change, but You can say, look, I want to devote around 5 years to climbing the corporate ladder, or I want to devote around 10 years to climbing the corporate ladder. Or I want to do 5 years corporate ladder, climb that, and then start a business, because I don't want to start a business when my children are young. So I must start a business before my children are born. So you can even strategically thinking of it that way. So you have to see your whole life holistically. Meeting someone, having children, managing your career, all of this is part of the same planning and part of the same things. This is your life.
I think that's what a lot of young people are missing. They're missing that plan, and it really, what you're saying reminds me of the story of Serena Williams and her sister. I don't know if you've heard of this story.
I know a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, well, basically their father, he created this whole life plan for the two sisters and how they would go from just mere children to becoming the very best and the second best at tennis in the world. And he wrote this plan out and he enacted it over their whole lives. And they actually got there as well. So I suppose that speaks to, the power of planning, the genuine power of planning, and the importance of taking it seriously and also being flexible as well. So what is your practical advice then on planning? Should people write it down on paper? Should they have a whiteboard? What should they do?
I did when I was younger. I wrote it all on paper in minute detail. I laugh about it now because the detail, day by day detail, I was like military discipline. I laugh about it now because that's not how life works. I think making strategic plans and then doing all the things every day to move towards that plan is good enough. And these days, what you write it on doesn't matter. It can be paper, it can be a flip chart, it can be on a planner, it can be digital, it can be in your mind, whatever works for you.
But what's important is to not get distracted, especially if it's in your mind. You should have that consolidated,
And remember, none of us are a machine. And there were times that I was distracted and I tried to forgive myself and say, okay, you've been really naughty. You've been clubbing 3 times a week this week because I had just met my husband and I thought, God, he's so cool. He's willing to have a full-time job and go clubbing 3 times a week. And then I got really tired and I couldn't do the night shifts in the factory that I wanted. So I thought, no, this is really too much. So I reduced it a little bit, only to the weekends, It's okay. Forgive yourself if you get distracted. You're human. Even now, I sometimes get distracted and I just keep reminding myself, if I stay focused, how many more young people I can help. So I try and push my own motivation buttons,
And I suppose your plan ties into that motivation. Did you at all, I suppose, visualize your plan?
Always. I imagined when I was younger, what kind of house I would want to live in, what kind of car will I have. I don't know, it just helped motivate me. I had very specific plans.
And I suppose it's easier than ever to visualize, because I suppose when you were planning, the internet wasn't so much available, right? Whereas now, I can go and do intensive research into cars that I'm going to plan to drive 10 years from now. And I can create a whole mood board if I wanted to, and homes and everything.
I did. Yeah. I drew very badly. I drew a Lamborghini. It was always my lifetime ambition to have a fabulous blue Lamborghini, neon blue. But the funny thing is, sometimes your ambitions change. I now can't see any merit in having a Lamborghini. I care much more about putting what resources I have, time and energy that I have, into Migrant Leaders. What I had planned previously doesn't motivate me anymore. So it's okay. Be flexible because you as a human being change and grow. Maybe you don't change, but you do grow and evolve. So it's okay. A Lamborghini doesn't motivate me anymore. So it's migrant leaders that motivates me
So the materialism just fell away there.
to a degree. I do still enjoy the nice things in life spent with my family. uh, you know, Experiencing a nice holiday, a special holiday, going to a nice hotel, going to a nice restaurant with my husband, or those good things. Having a comfortable home. Those are things I enjoy, and there's no shame in that. People should have ambition and should enjoy the things in life. But no, for me, um, what I imagined as a young person regarding material things doesn't motivate me anymore.
I see. Do you find that a lot of people are materialistic from our generation at this age?
Not any more than we were. Not
I
any more
see.
than we were. We were very materialistic. Remember, we were, like I was a teenager in the early 90s, just after Thatcher's greed is good 80s. So, so we were as materialistic as the young people now. Um, don't deny your ambitions. Whatever you feel is valid. Yeah, don't deny what you feel. Don't go against human instinct. Human instinct is to have ambition, drive, want things in life, want security, want luxuries. There's nothing wrong with that. The question is, what are you willing to do to get there? Are you going to do it through your talent and hard work? Or do you think you could walk all over everyone and get those things? That's what defines you as a human being. How you achieve your ambitions is what makes you a particular kind of human being.
I think that's some very good advice there, to not be ashamed of ambition. And I mean, I know that lots of young people, it's like because we're so immersed in, social media and all of these influencers who are indeed themselves materialistic and have abundance. Young people now are sort of turning away from that, but also neutering their ambition and saying, that's for them. I'm just going to do whatever it is. And, these people don't have a plan. And they're also sort of casting aside their ambition almost in rebellion against, people who are bad influences. But your statement is that we shouldn't be ashamed of ambition, and we should be unreservedly, pursuing that. And then within time, good people are going to prosper and then provide value, I suppose.
Yeah, I honestly, wholeheartedly believe that. That good people with integrity who are willing to work hard and use their talents will succeed and at the end be happy. So, don't give up your integrity. You actually don't need to give up your personal integrity in order to be financially successful. Quite the opposite. I do think people who maintain their personal integrity and do things correctly instill trust and in themselves. So people want to work with them. So in the long term, you will be more prosperous financially if you do things with integrity.
Absolutely. That sounds about right. Suppose, is there anything that you'd like to say to close?
It's really to say to young people, don't worry so much. Don't worry so much. In Iran, they say you throw an apple upwards, and by the time it's back in your hands, it's turned many times. Life is a bit like that. It has a way of finding, life has a way of finding equilibrium. Just believe in yourself, keep trying, keep working hard, look after yourself and your loved ones, and everything will be fine at the end. Don't worry too much. Really, don't worry. I wished the young Elham knew that.
Elham, thank you so much for being a guest on the Inspiring Youth Agency podcast. It's been brilliant to speak to you today.
Thank you, likewise, and have a good rest of Saturday.